I always say to my students, do a soft zigzag so that you've got junctions to take off other branches. You don't want to come towards yourself, because if you do, then invariably your thinnest end is at the wrong end. So if you can imagine this attaching to the trunk, keep moving your sponge around, otherwise you get the same pattern. If you move it round, you'll get different patterns. This month I'm going to talk about just how to paint trees quite simply. This is a little sketchbook I got. I love trees, and you know, when I just have a minute I just do a few sketches, and this was an idea for a lino print. Can't say it worked out brilliantly, but and they don't have to be finished. So, and I just like to do them on one side. So I've not got very far, but you know, I do like trees. So just to, you know, I'm not going to try and do a tree as complicated as that, but I've just mixed up some ultramarine blue and burnt sienna here together to get a very dark colour. Let's just have a look at what that looks like. So one of the first things is always paint a tree the way it grows. So what you wouldn't do is you wouldn't come backwards, okay, and I can demonstrate that in a minute, but you would always paint a tree the way it grows. So let's just, I'm just going to make one up here. So basically I've got a bit of hair on there, got a trunk at the bottom, and you do a little bit at a time. Okay, just going to leave a little puddle of paint on there just while I show you something. This bit at the bottom there, that would be fine if it was like on snow, because you'd have a very crisp line. But if it was, you wanted that to be a softer line, I would do that pretty much at this time, and you would just wet quite a long way underneath with clear water, come up to it, and then very gently touch it. So it would sort of soften into the ground, okay, and then you could carry on. And what I tend to do is I tend to put the main trunk in first, and a tree will go from thick to thin, okay? It won't go thick, then thin, then thick, and then, you know, you might have a few little what they call burrs in there, but generally the overall shape would be from thick to thin. Now what I sometimes do is, if I think I want to have a branch coming out there, I might just put a little bit of the start, and I wouldn't put one opposite, you'd stagger them really, so I'd probably have another one down here maybe, and there could even be one just there, and then carry on. This is just a simple way of getting a good outline of a tree. I'm going to do it relatively straight, even though we do know that some trees are blown in the wind, and dependent upon the prevailing wind, it'll depend on what sort of shape it is. But I might just do another one here, might do another one here. Now I'm going to change down a brush size now, change to a smaller brush until I've got something. And then I could even go down to a rigger, a number 1 rigger. Because that will give you a beautiful fine line. okay? And then, so I'm going to use probably these two brushes now, and then you do your branches, okay? So your branches would also go from thick to thin as well. So what you wouldn't have, you wouldn't just have, let me just do one here. You wouldn't just have a line like that. It would definitely be thicker where it meets the trunk. Okay, so paint that in, and it wouldn't be as straight as that either. But let's just change it now. Okay, and then this one, make it thicker where it meets the tree, and then it might just do a bit of a bend here. And this one might be thicker where it joins. So soft zigzag. And I'm just releasing the pressure of my hand to get that brush to be as fine as possible. But then when you think you can't go any finer, then you stop, and we'll change brush in a minute. That can just be a little one. Okay, I think I might just use a rigger for that. And then with your rigger, I'm just going to put in another one here. Make it a little bit thicker there. And then we can start to add more branches. And you know, make sure that they cross over one another. And let them cross over one another like that. So I'll just carry on. So I've done quite a lot here, but I just thought I'd finish this with the camera on. You see, like this one here, you know, take them back and cross over the trunk itself. That would definitely look more natural. And you can see how the colour, as the paint runs out, gets more grey, which makes it look more authentic as well. Something like that. So that's just a really nice winter tree. Then you can just, with a bit of a sponge, but I want to get a bit more water in there. I want this to be really watery. Use a natural sponge, very pale. Keep moving your sponge around, otherwise you get the same pattern. If you move it round, you'll get different patterns. So there you have it, a simple winter tree. So just a few top tips. I've already mentioned some, that you always paint it the way it grows, basically from thick to thin. So if you find that really hard, I'll just move these a minute. I always paint my branches away from myself like that. Okay. You don't want to come towards yourself, because if you do, then invariably your thinnest end is at the wrong end. So if you can imagine this attaching to the trunk, you've got your thinnest end at the wrong end, because you're going the wrong way. You're not going away from yourself, you're going back to yourself. I hope that makes sense. The other tip, I've just done it there actually, is to do this with the branches. So I mentioned don't have them straight. They wouldn't look like that. I always say to my students, do a soft zigzag so that you've got junctions to take off other branches. Can you see I've got like little junctions here to take off lots of other branches, and don't forget to cross your branches over one another, because that makes it more authentic. You could go on forever. Now I've seen people do them like that, I've seen people do trees like that. It wouldn't be like that either. I mean, you do get the odd tree that has these weird sort of branches, but I think for an artistic point of view, for painting, then if you can try and think soft zigzag in your head. And when I was learning to do trees, it was an artist called Alwyn Crawshaw. I don't even know whether you can still get his books, but he was great at trees. And I sat one afternoon and I must have painted over 100 until I could do them, basically. It's just like anything. The more and more you practice at something, the better you get at it. So that's another top tip, is a tree goes from thick to thin, the trunk goes from thick to thin, the branches go from thick to thin. You need to be working away from yourself, or turn your board around so that your thinnest end is at the right end. And so there are just a few little tips that I think are quite useful.